Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're zooming way, way back to trace the absolute wild ride of human progress. We're talking the whole shebang, from the literal dawn of Earth all the way to the rise of ancient megacities. It's an epic story of survival, adaptation, and honestly, just sheer human ingenuity.
But to really wrap our heads around this timeline, we've got to ask a fundamental question. How exactly did environmental pressures and, a few primitive stone tools trigger this massive chain reaction that eventually built modern civilization? How on earth did we go from single-cell algae to sprawling megacities with actual indoor plumbing?
So, here's how we're breaking it down today. 1. Mapping geological time. 2. Stages of human evolution. 3. The Stone Age shifts. 4. The Neolithic Revolution. And finally, 5. The Indus Valley Civilization. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Mapping geological time.
Think of Earth's history kind of like Russian nesting dolls. It's divided from these incredibly massive categories down to much smaller ones. We start with eons, which span upwards of 500 million years, right? And then we break those down into eras, periods, epochs, and finally ages. This roadmap is absolutely vital. It's what allows us to pinpoint exactly when humanity actually enters the picture amid the vastness of deep time.
And here is our exact address in deep time right now. We're in the Phanerozoic Eon, the Cenozoic Era, the Quaternary Period, the Holocene Epoch, and the Megalaean Age. Now, the Cenozoic Era marks the rise of mammals, but humans, at least as we know them today, don't actually show up until much, much later, as we zoom into that Quaternary Period.
Section 2. Stages of human evolution. So, tracking our biological progression, we start seeing early hominids like Australopithecus around 3.5 million years ago. Then we move into Homo habilis and then Homo erectus, and what's really amazing is that the evidence of this journey is literally buried all around us. For instance, a fossilized baby skull of a Homo erectus was famously discovered in India's Narmada Valley back in 1982. Eventually, of course, this evolutionary line leads straight to Homo sapiens. That's us, roughly 35,000 years ago. But what was actually changing in us during all that time?
Well, it was all in the head. Literally. The crucial point here is cranial capacity. As the internal volume of our skull expanded, our cognitive ability skyrocketed. A bigger brain simply meant a better capacity to think, to learn, and, this is the real game changer, to craft tools. That very ability to make tools became the absolute primary driver of the eras we now call the Stone Ages.
Section 3. The Stone Age shifts.
The contrast here is just stark. The Paleolithic era was freezing. We're talking an ice age averaging roughly -30 degrees Celsius. Humans were purely nomadic, hunting these bulky, furry animals with really heavy, crude stone hand axes. There was no complex society at all. But then, around 10,000 BCE, everything shifts. The Holocene epoch begins. The climate warms up to about 15 degrees, and animals lose their heavy fur and get much faster. So to survive, humans had to adapt. They invented microliths, these tiny razor-sharp projectile tools used for arrows and spears just to keep up with the faster prey. We also start to see semi-nomadic life, early huts, and even the early domestication of dogs and sheep.
This whole climate catalyst just goes to show that human advancement wasn't random in the slightest. The warming Earth literally planted the seeds for humans to settle down. This greening of the Earth meant gathering food year-round was suddenly so much easier. Vulnerable animals naturally entered into a reciprocal relationship with humans, which led to taming cattle and dogs. Naturally, more food and resources sparked a massive population boom, and more people meant we couldn't just wander constantly anymore. We had to start building semi-permanent hut structures right near fresh water bodies.
Section 4. The Neolithic Revolution. Now, historian V. Gordon Childe coined a brilliant formula that perfectly captures the cause and effect of this era. It's a 4-step process. Step 1. Humans master agriculture, fully domesticating plants. Step 2. Well, you have to stay in one place to tend those crops, right? So that creates sedentary life and permanent settlements. Step 3. For the very first time in history, humans produce a surplus, literally more food than they need to survive. And Step 4. That surplus has to be controlled. This naturally creates the haves and have-nots, leading straight to social stratification and the formation of early states.
Because humans were now farming, they faced a totally new challenge. You can't exactly farm a wheat field with a hunting spear. They had to invent entirely new tech. So they created ground and polished tools, like sickles and heavy grinding stones.
They even invented pottery just to store all that extra agricultural surplus. We also see some fascinating architecture emerge. There's the earliest evidence of rice cultivation at Col d'Ivoire around 5000 BCE. In Burzahom, Kashmir, they built these incredible circular pit dwellings dug straight into the ground. And in South India, you have these massive, unique ash mounds created by pastoral groups burning cattle dung.
Section 5. The Indus Valley Civilization. When we say civilization here, we are not just talking about a couple of dusty villages. Over 1,400 Indus Valley sites have been discovered. It is absolutely mind-blowing. This civilization covered a staggering distance of 1,550 kilometers, stretching all the way from Afghanistan in the north down to Maharashtra in the south. It was a massive, sprawling network of interconnected cities.
And what's really fascinating is just how modern these cities felt during their mature phase, around 2600 to 1900 BCE. They had this brilliant spatial division, fortified citadels for public buildings and lower towns for residences. The streets laid out in a strict 90-degree grid pattern, honestly something a lot of modern cities still struggle with today. They mass-produced these standardized baked bricks perfectly proportioned in a 1:2:4 ratio. But arguably the most impressive part is the plumbing. Almost every single household had private courtyards and indoor toilets with completely separate covered drainage lines. They basically ensured raw sewage never, ever mixed with fresh drinking water.
To really highlight this urban mastery, look no further than Dolavira. This site was actually designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2021 because its urban settlement is so flawlessly preserved. Now, unlike most Indus cities that used mud bricks, Dolavira was constructed primarily using stone. It had this very unique three-part layout: a fortified citadel, a middle town, and a lower town. But the absolute crown jewel of Dolavira was its highly sophisticated water conservation system. They built check dams and massive portable reservoirs to harvest rainwater, perfectly designed to combat that harsh, dry climate.
Of course, you don't build cities like this without some serious wealth and infrastructure. The Indus Valley was definitely not isolated. They had a flourishing trade network fueled by standardized weights and mass-produced crafts like pottery, bangles, and steatite seals. They were sourcing copper from Rajasthan and importing highly prized lapis lazuli all the way from Afghanistan. Using two-wheeled ox carts and caravans, this external trade network reached straight into Mesopotamia. In fact, ancient Mesopotamian texts actually refer to the Indus Valley traders by the name Meluha.
Now, we still can't actually decipher their written script, but artifacts like the famous Pashupati seal, which was uncovered at Mohenjo-Daro, give us this really incredible archaeological glimpse into their world. It depicts a horned, male deity sitting in a yogic posture, surrounded by a rhino, a buffalo, an elephant, and a tiger. It's just a beautiful snapshot of a thriving, complex culture right before its eventual decline. A decline which, by the way, most evidence suggests was triggered by shifting river courses and, you guessed it, climate change.
Which really brings us to this final thought. We just looked back at millions of years of cause and effect. Freezing temperatures forced tool innovation, warming periods sparked the agricultural revolution, and surplus food built our earliest grid cities. So it leaves us with a pretty profound question. If all of that is true, what will our current rapidly changing climate force human society to invent next? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope you walk away today with a much richer understanding of exactly where we come from.